Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat.
How you doing, love?
How's everything going?
Well, I'm a little bit frantic. I realise I haven't done a sound check for us yet, but I'll do that in a second. We'll do it live. Just do it live. We'll do it live. Just do it live. But yeah, really good actually. How about you? You were away on Thursday. Tell us about your birthday weekend. While I play some funky music in the background.
Popped up to Christchurch just to catch up with my brother and his partner, and had a very excellent meal out at a new barbecue joint that they've got up there called Bison Barbecue.
Nice.
Ate basically my body weight in American barbecue food, and am only just now recovering from what heaven must feel like.
Yeah, we went to a barbecue place when we were up there as well. Just reminded me if you can hear my background vibes.
Yep. Yeah, I got it.
Where did we go? I can't remember. Bro Leon took us to a place. It escapes me. There's a bit of a barbecue culture up in Christchurch, actually. In fact,
there absolutely is. Yeah.
I had a friend who I kind of lost contact with. His name was Caleb, and he really got into the low, slow cooking. You know, guy in his 40s, used to be a police officer in Auckland and worked with young people and stuff, and I think passed away of cancer in like the first week of COVID. It was shocking. And so he was in Christchurch in that kind of culture, and there was like 3 places that my mate Leon talked about that he wants to take us to, so we have to go back because it's a real thing for Christchurch. So yeah. Oh, that's good. You're getting good. Oh, your birthday's tomorrow officially. Are you still going to be with us?
Yep, plan to be.
I have a birthday present for you for tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to wrap him up and put a bow on his head. His name is Shane Tapo. He's going to join us for the night.
Oh, nice.
So there you go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Yeah, we'll get into the show very shortly. Obviously, everybody knows what the sort of biggest news story of the day is in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Of course, we're talking about Marama Davidson. I was in my studio today, Chewy, and I'm just bringing it up to make sure I got it right. And I saw this breaking news. The Greens were going to do an announcement, breaking news. And you know, did you have any guesses? Because I had a guess, right? I know what this is. I reckon this is going to be about Darlene Tana.
That's what I
thought. So I went. Well. I actually made a thumbnail and everything, and put Darlene Tana in it. And I went, okay, this is a surprise, and this is going to be about Darlene Tana. It's not going to be good news. Yada yada yada. Who would know that the actual press conference would be worse news than that would have been if it had been bad news? So yeah, we'll. I mean, we don't have too much to say other than you know, I've wished Marama all the best from us, meaning BHN community. It feels a bit, there's a strange thing about it because we are a media company. I had to go, who does a news show, I had to go to the Greens and request an interview. Kind of felt a bit grubby doing it, but you do it because that's what we do. And then made a clip and put it up on TikTok and felt a bit grubby again. It's kind of a strange thing that you like when these bad, horrible news has come out, and let's hope it all works out good, you know, but when these big news stories that are kind of hard come out, that you still got to do your job. If one can call this a job. So I don't expect, obviously got told by the Greens, no media is being done at the moment, which of course is half of the course expected that.
No worries there.
And not expecting to hear back from Marama at all from us to her, but I wanted to make sure that we were thinking of her. Like probably 3.5 million other people sent messages to her via all her social medias today. So yeah, it was a full on sort of a day, wasn't it? So yeah, obviously we're going to cover that off as well. And we had Q&A back in the weekend. Willie Jackson, if you saw the full Willie Jackson interview on Q&A, you know, Jack Tame again held his feet to the fire, took a lot of stick out of him because Willie Jackson was a massive supporter of charter schools when the left wanted to do it. And now that charter schools, he's not behind it. So he got his, as he always does, Jack Tame got his I'm going to call you out on this questions in as well. Asked a lot of hard questions about Māori health and said, name one thing that the government is now not going to fund in Māori health. Obviously Māori Health Authority, but when it comes to individualised places, and because they haven't released anything yet, he couldn't say, well, there's this, and this. So he got a bit of pushback from Jack. It was a not that this is not important to me, but it was a balanced journalistic interview. So we've got a few clips to play out of that as well. And also, real interesting. Actually, I love doing stories where we can incorporate like a piece of pop culture or, like when we did the one last week about, that's something else. Last week about it wasn't really a topic, but it was about being brainwashed. And we're going to do it again probably tomorrow night, and it's going to be volume 2 because I saw a piece with Candace Owen over the weekend and I just went brainwashed, baby. But tonight I've got a piece to play, and I don't think I've played it on the show before, Chewy, but I think I've talked about it. A guy called Simon Sinek talking about millennials in the workplace, and in that conversation he talks about what social media does to young millennials, and that time was more like the teenagers, and today we're being told that there's a push by some to ban social media on under 16s. So we want to talk about that, and I want to play you the thing from Simon Sinek. So it's going to be it's a whole picture kind of conversation around that. But yeah, I mean, I know we normally talk on Mondays about what we got up to the weekend, and I always try and throw out a piece of content. I watched Oppenheimer over the weekend, hadn't seen it yet, and it's on Netflix at the moment, and I managed to watch the whole.
What did you think?
The whole 3 hours. I was concerned it was going to be, doesn't mean bad, but when like Schindler's List was a kind of movie that I was like, it's a great movie, but it's like, and I saw it was 3 hours, and I'm just like, this is going to drag. Didn't drag. Like I actually didn't. It was a good movie, well-made movie. And of course the themes around it are very interesting around, dropping a bomb on, was it 70,000 people at Hiroshima? Was it more than that? And that being a good thing by some people because it led to the end of World War II, and how they were originally going to drop it on Germany, but then Germany surrendered, and most people thinking that the war would have come to an end anyway. So was America just doing it as a test case? Or, I thought it was a very, very good movie. I can see why it went around the awards categories, but not quite like, we talked about one the other day, and I'm like, it's kind of like The Joker, where you walk out going, great movie, I feel awful. Wasn't quite the same as that, but yeah, some pretty dark themes around it, obviously, really.
Oppenheimer made me feel like I was going crazy.
Why so?
Because everyone was buzzing about it, and I'm I've said many times I'm a history buff, I'm a movie buff. This should be fucking crack to me. I generally love Nolan films.
Yep.
And I just sat there for the entire thing, and it just left me cold.
Because you didn't like the movie, you didn't like the subject matter.
I didn't like it.
All right.
I didn't like it. I didn't think it was that good. Cillian Murphy's performance is excellent. Like all the parts are there.
Yep.
It just felt off to me. Just soulless, a little bit wanky.
Yep.
And yeah, I'd honestly, I'd love to be able to put my finger on it exactly what I didn't like about it, but I just can't. It's just like the overall thing is like I didn't really enjoy the movie.
Maybe I can put my finger on it because Rajan says possibly what we both should have done. I get you, Pat, watching it and Barbie back to back was an interesting experience. So maybe it's.
I have a friend that did that on the same day, and I swear it gave them brain damage. Just from the hard gear shift between those two movies.
Yeah. All right. Now listen, you guys know we have got a bit of a fundraiser going on at the moment, and the merch is up and running. I want to just talk about this for a second. I know people are like, no, talking about the merch is so boring, but actually let's just talk about something. Our merch is all available. If you made your order last week up until and including Saturday, those have all been sent off. I imagine I'll get them back from the printer Wednesday, Thursday. They'll be in the on the courier Thursday, Friday. You'll have them, Friday, Monday, depending on weekend deliveries. But what I'm going to do this week is completely coincidentally, we have this big news story that's surrounding cancer at the moment. I've had someone email me, they want to remain anonymous, so we will, who wants to know how much we will raise. Oh, sorry, if you're not aware what we're doing, if you buy some buffer gear this year, I still haven't changed the spelling mistake. If you buy some buffer gear this week, sorry, this is the last week we're doing it here, I'll do that one, which is yellow, and this is actually navy blue. I don't know why it looks purple, but it's navy blue. We are going to give 20% of the profits to the Cancer Society. Now, originally we did that because this government said to 13 cancer drugs, and we thought we can do a little bit. I think when we did it for medical aid for Palestinians, we sent them about $300 or $400. It's not massive. So what happened is whatever we sell, we'll give 25% of the profits to the Cancer Society. BHN will then match that, and then we've also got someone in the chat, maybe not in the chat, but someone one of the viewers or listeners who has also said they will match it again up to $500. So if we made $300, then BHN will chuck in $300 and person X will chuck in $300, and that's nearly $1,000. So that's kind of cool. And I thought, well, that's really cool.
Amazingly generous.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I've already emailed you back, and the first line should have been how generous. So we'll say it now if you're watching. So what I thought I'd do, and I don't like doing this like as a, like a clickbait, like, oh, I didn't do it in the first week, but I've still got quite a few of the Beardy Boy gear left, that we gave away last year. Let me get one out. These ones. There's yellow, and this is actually very similar to the colors, isn't it? I know you can't hear me way back here, but this is very similar to the colors of what we're doing as well. So what I'll do is, this has obviously been paid for, and this has come out of, the business's back pocket already, but anyone who buys buffer gear this week will also get a piece of Beardy Boy merch thrown in for free. Okay? This week only. I'm sorry if you bought it last week. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I just thought with the announcement today that Marama's made, let's just try and ramp it up a bit more, because why not? Because why not? Basically, there's no other reason than to say because why not? So I don't know what sizes I've got. I don't know how many of the yellows I've got and how many of the blacks I've got. If I can match the size that you order, so if you order like a large buffer hoodie and I've got a large Beardy Boy t-shirt, then I'll put it in. If I don't, you'll get a random size that you can give to someone in your family or someone you know. Clear and fair? All good?
Nice.
And of course, that's bhnshop.nz to be involved with that. Okay. There we go. I think we're done there, Joe. Everything else good?
That's housekeeping done.
Yeah, housekeeping's done. The exits are here, here, and here. I think that we'll actually start with, it feels right to probably start with a Marama story, but I actually think what we'll do, so I think we'll start with the social media story, and then we'll come back to Marama and play the 3 news item. I watched the whole press conference, and I've got the whole press conference recorded, but I think, as always happens, we get a synopsized version within the news, so we'll just do that. We'll watch the news item instead. So let's do this. There is a group called 36 Months. It's Australian, and there's a guy called Whipper, who's an Australian radio DJ, and he's got behind this group called 36 Months. And 36 months is quite simply the time frame between 13 and 16 at the moment. It's legal, apparently. I don't actually know how they'd make it illegal, like what would they actually do, but it's legal at the moment to be on social media at 13 or something. Or that's the rules. And they want to make it 16, and the 36 months is actually the time difference between, it's 3 years. So this is the conversation going on at the moment. And this morning on AM, we had Labour and ACT getting in there talking about it. I'm always interested when ACT talks about reducing or restricting something, because that seems to be contrary to the libertarian view. But I guess, in theory, they probably wouldn't fight for alcohol for 8-year-olds. So there probably are lines if they are indeed a libertarian party. So let's have a listen.
If I could get a cheap shot in there first, they're keen to fight for incest.
Okay, leaving that right alone.
I said it was a cheap shot.
Leaving it right alone. So here's a story from this morning about this is just a conversation between ACT and Labour about social media. And then we're going to play you a little bit of commentary about what social media does to the brain of a teenager.
Later on the show this morning, a group that are leading the charge in Australia in a campaign they're calling 36 months. They want the age that you can register to be on social media to be raised from 13 to 16. And it has cross-party support in Parliament in Australia. Priyanka, you were Minister for Youth. Do you think that this is something that we should be doing here?
I think it warrants looking into further. I mean, just given what we know, the research that we have.
I know I'm not going to interrupt this too much. I'll try not to. I don't know how. I mean, like, you can stop a 16-year-old. Well, you can put boundaries in front of a 16-year-old from buying alcohol by having to go to a location and be served the alcohol. You can't stop it, obviously, from someone else buying it and giving it to them. But what's the hurdle to get across a 13-year-old on social media getting Facebook? You got to put your date of birth in there. Okay, I'll just add 3 years. You know what I mean? It's like, is this in principle only, or is there actually a way they can do it? I don't know. David Seymour actually proved himself to be a complete moron in this conversation, just quietly, but you wouldn't expect that.
So what? Yeah, of course. I've got some very strong thoughts about this, but let's see David try and articulate a coherent position.
Well, David Seymour starts to use examples of websites that aren't social media and says, are they social media? No, David, YouTube is not social media. It's quite easy, actually. Oh, let's just have a little think about it for a second. No problems.
On brain development in young people, the online harms that we know do exist as well. So I think it's worth looking into. I'd want to see a little bit more, I guess, research or some information into how the monitoring and how you'd hold, whether it's companies to account or what the plan is there. But we know that access to social media also increases access to child exploitation and other harms. So what we won't be doing is cutting the very roles in government agencies that are working to address child exploitation and harm, as we're seeing happening now.
But shouldn't we, David, shouldn't we prevent the platforms that are allowing this child exploitation to happen? Shouldn't we prevent young people from accessing them in the first place? Shouldn't we make a stand on that?
Well, I think this is a starting point. Something has gone very wrong in about the last 10 to 12 years. If you look at the number of young people who report mental distress in the annual Ministry of Health survey, it's gone from about 5% in 2012 to something. It's
funny when Seymour goes, something has gone wrong. When I played this bit from Simon Sinek, right, who just explains what's going on, you're like, oh, they know what's gone wrong. They're just either choosing to ignore the research, or they're just knowing the research and or they don't know the research, because they know it's very clear what's going on as to why this generation are suffering from these things more than others. They're completely clear on it, without question.
Like 24% now, so almost 5 times as many young people reporting distress. And I suspect that the rise of social media and smartphones everywhere has really changed young people's brains. It's increased the pressures on them, and that is something that as a society we're now working through. So, getting rid of cell phones in schools is partly about focusing on learning, but I think it's partly about giving some time when you don't.
Sorry, if people don't know, the reason I go, ugh, is remember David Seymour's one of those people who screams nanny state from the highest order when he's talking about the left, yet he's now telling parents what they can and can't do with their kids. It's just, it's just tiring. It's just tiring. And look, and I don't necessarily disagree with the ban on cell phones in schools. I've got kids who have gone through that period, and I get it. But what I don't get is this idea of, nanny state. Look at this Labour-right government telling parents what to do, then they get in and tell parents what to do. It's just tiring, Chewy. Do you want to say anything, or should we keep going?
I want to let him finish his thought so I can thoroughly eviscerate him.
All right. So you're telling me to shut up is actually what you're doing, aren't you? Fair enough. Here we go.
Friendly
have
fire.
that digital leash as a young person. And then you come to the question about, well, there's some of these platforms, maybe they should say you can't sign up until you are X or Y age. I'm open to that debate, but I just raise a couple of things. One is that actually getting into the digital world is not all bad. Young people actually get a lot out of that as well. So which activities do you include?
It doesn't have to mean social media. It doesn't have to mean it under the age of 16.
So but then you get into, okay, so would you count YouTube as social media?
No, David.
You can get a lot of rubbish on there, but you can.
It's a pretty easy answer, is it? No. The answer is no, David. YouTube is not social media.
You can also learn some really interesting things on there, and that's why I think you need to start with, well, okay, what are the things that are good about the digital world? Because the internet, the digital world has done a lot of wonderful things for the world. On the other hand, there are other things that are actually, I think, quite damaging. I'll give you another example. I mean, Wikipedia. Anyone can edit
No,
that. It's
David.
interactive.
For
Is that social
fuck's
media?
sake.
Would you allow?
Do you know the saying, okay, boomer? Doesn't it just feel appropriate right now? No, Wikipedia is not social media, David.
I
Fucking
even
hell.
hate the way he says it. Wikipedia. Who says it
Or
like that?
Instagram or TikTok, would you be opposed to that? So,
Well, it would
there's-
be easy
yeah.
enough to stipulate that, wouldn't it? To say Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, particularly platforms where that exploitation
Well,
is
there you
happening.
go. We're making it up. We could create the policy here.
Why
But I
don't you?
just make the point that
We can
She's
make
just-
policy here on the bush.
She's just listed some valid social medias. You're going, what's a social media anyway? And 3 are listed. Oh, well, let's just make it up. Well, just listing some actual social medias.
I think there are some questions that you actually have to work through a bit carefully. So, yep, there's something going really wrong with young people and mental health, and we can see the evidence of that. I think changes are happening. The school cell phone ban is an example of that. But also, you've got to be a bit careful of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Like,
All right. So there you go, Chewy. I'm going to play you another clip shortly about what, and like I said, he's either playing dumb or he is dumb, because we know the answer as to why this is happening, and I'm going to play it for you in a second. But before you
Maybe
self implode,
maybe Atlas just haven't told him what social media that they want to use. But like, I love this position that social media has somehow fucking damaged our kids and completely ignores the older generations it's absolutely destroyed since COVID. I think everybody in the chat here has relatives whose brain has absolutely been cooked by Facebook.
yeah,
Look, and as much as I want to make jokes about it, kids on social media, I'm not a parent. I empathize incredibly with people like yourself, Pat, who have to navigate the fact that their kids are trying to work in a world that didn't exist when you were their age.
yeah.
That is frightening. And I see it in parents all the time. And I think hitting let's ban it is the fucking easy button. But it is literally throwing the bathwater out with the baby. I did that round the wrong way. But you
Got it.
get the
We're
idea.
with you.
Social media is an incredibly useful tool.
Yeah.
But it's also that pipeline where bullying used to stop at the school gate and now it goes right into the kid's bedroom. Again, that is terrifying.
Yeah. So you're right. What it is, it's not anything new. It's just a new delivery service. So
Yes,
kids used to get bullied in the playground, and then they'd go home. And then they'd get bullied in the playground, and maybe they'd get prank phone called. And then they'd get bullied in the playground, and maybe they'd get an email or two. And then they'd get bullied in the playground, and now it comes to their phone. So the bullying side hasn't changed. The delivery method has. And because it's so much more effective at delivering, there are different consequences that come from that. I'll play.
And I think
you go. Yep.
I think
Yep.
there's a whole conversation about how things like algorithms delivering content to people and how it radicalizes people. There's an argument outside of that for any age, but I think when we look at this generation, the kids that are growing up with it, they are more media savvy than any other generation before us. because they're immersed in it. And I think for a government to go, yeah, let's make it 16, they'll get around it. They'll find a new platform. These guys in government setting this legislation are so removed from this generation that they don't understand the technology, they don't understand the platform, and they won't react quick enough to move to whatever's next.
Yeah.
The actual solution to this, in my opinion, as someone that works with people that have these concerns, what do I do for my kid who's getting his first smartphone? Is the same as a lot of other things that parents are scared of: sexual education, bullying, alcohol and drug use, that sort of thing. Fucking talk to your kids.
Yeah.
They must always have a pathway to go to you as a parent and go, this thing happened and I'm telling you about it. Rather than feeling this thing is banned, I shouldn't be on it, I'll get in trouble if I talk to my parents. You isolate them in that bubble. Rimmer is not a parent.
One of the things about this is also the trust we have for those people. We talked about Christopher Luxon's independent review last week, and we were like, this is of the Marae, Manurewa Marae. And it's not that necessarily many people here, at least, thought that was a bad idea. It's, can we trust him? And I feel a bit the same, because some of these ideas aren't necessarily bad, and some of this should be laid at the feet of parents. This is where I go on my parenting rant now, is that I'm really sick and tired of parents going, what can I do? I was in a group the other day. Like, I go out and have breakfast with a group of businessmen once every 2 weeks, and they were talking about it. And I actually posted the video I'm about to show you, and I said, you are the parent. You still do have agency. How does a kid get an iPhone? Well, they get it through you. You can still be involved in these processes. Parents don't have to go, if a 10-year-old's got an iPhone, those parents are whatever the R word is we use now instead of the R word. Whatever that word is, that's what they are. We had a very clear rule in our household. There was no cell phones in primary school. Intermediate school, we had a whānau phone. We called it the whānau phone. I've still got it. It's right here, actually. Whānau phone, and that basically was a family phone that when the kids went on a sleepover or they needed to be picked up, they could take it with them, but they didn't own it. My kids didn't get a cell phone until they were in the first year of secondary school. Now, I'm not saying that we've got it all right and they've got it all wrong. We still have no phones in your bedroom, 14-year-old overnight. You can actually put things in place to do this. There is an element of this overall topic that parents don't have to just go, well, all their friends have got them. What am I supposed to do? You're in charge. You're in charge. The child's not in charge. You're in charge. The other thing, though, as well, and you were talking about COVID and stuff, there is this slice of a generation who have had the shittest hand dealt to them. It's like, if you look at like an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old now, the guys and girls that were finishing school through that COVID lockdown and starting university through that COVID lockdown, you can see issues to do with mental health and, a confusion and low achieving and missing out and isolation. In my opinion, and in my anecdotal evidence from looking around me to a lot of parents, far more significantly than not even the generation before them, than the same generation that were a bit older, or that the same generation that's coming up now. There is a real, and I would say 18 through 21-year-old, just if you guys know people in that age group, just think about the number of kids 18 to 21, not 25, not 15, who are like anxious, who have mental health issues, who can only do one paper at university because that's all they can have. My observations are it's really significant, and it happens to be that slice of that generation that went through COVID as maturing adults, late school, early university. And you put that into the frame as well with what we're seeing out there now, and it's devastating. I'm going to play this for you now, unless you want to respond to anything I've said, Chewy.
No, play the clip. I've got something else to show afterwards.
All right. So this guy's called Simon Sinek, and many of you would have seen this. This has been around for a few years now. So he was talking about millennials in the workplace. Now, millennials in the workplace now, I think millennials started about 25, don't they? So they're an older generation. But the thing that's important about this to me is when he talks about what social media and what cell phones do to your brain. This is a 3-minute clip. If you have not seen this, pay attention if you've got people in your life who are teenagers. And I watched this with my kids probably 10 times over the space of 5 years, because when they said things like, but I want that, and I'd go, dude, let's watch this again. Let's talk out what social media and phones can do to a young mind. So I included my kids in these conversations. I don't know if it worked or not. That was a path we took. But let's have a listen to what Simon Sinek says of the research.
Technology. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, feels good, right? So, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely. And so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 hi. Because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower, did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive, right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important?
Yeah, this is really good as well. We could just cut it there, but what he talks about is how is that going to impact people through their life, and he relates it to, if we agree that the dopamine hits you get from a phone are equivalent on some level or in the same ballpark as alcohol, then what we're seeing is the same habits of people as they grow older going to social media as ones in the past have gone to alcohol. So how to deal with life using alcohol, people are now dealing with life using social media and phones.
Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is, because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired. And what we're seeing is, as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them as something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook, right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous, right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance.
There you go. Now, I would challenge any parent to watch that and then go, sweet as, here you go, have a phone. But look, I'm not trying to play both sides of this. I'm not saying so I support what David Seymour's doing. I'm saying if we're going to have a conversation, let's have the conversation, not play this stupid game of, well, I don't know why. There seems to be some strange reason why these kids are not. It's like, no, we know what the research is. We know why it is. Now let's address it. Chewy.
Yeah. The core point out of there for me is, yes, everything in moderation.
Yeah.
But when you're growing a functional human, trying to mold a child into an adult that can think and make their own decisions. And everybody knows in the teenage years, that's the risk-taking years. Kids are working out what they can and can't get away with. And you know, we've tried things, and you can look at some of the things that he's talking about, you know, say alcohol use and that sort of thing. When everything's locked away and no, you have to wait until you're 18, you have a couple of things. You have someone that is sneaking around behind their parents' back to get at the thing that they were told that they can't have.
Yeah.
Or people arriving at 18 and the attitude is fucking have at it. No rules. Just go crazy. And this massive overcorrection of this thing that they haven't been able to have. The thing that I am talking about is that you need to introduce someone to something. You need to establish some ground rules. You know, yes, don't take your phone into your bedroom. Don't have a computer in your room. Give yourself some space to be away from this thing that can be the best thing in the world, can be the worst. But I think when parents go, you know, maybe there's people that agree with David that they should be banned. You know, forget the mechanics of how it works, all of that sort of thing. It sounds good to them because they can put off that problem. They can just pretend that the modern world doesn't exist for a little bit longer. But I think they're just kicking the can down the road a little bit. Hopefully, hopefully this doesn't tip my hat about where I work too much, but this is an example of the organization that I work for has put together. Parents need to know. And it's about exploring the stuff with the child.
Yeah.
It is learning the stuff with the child. It's understanding how the stuff works. Teaching. You know, agreeing to and planning to and modeling the behavior that you want.
Yeah.
I mean, what a kick in the nuts for the kid if you're told, no, you can't use social media. Mum and dad are going to sit on the couch and do Facebook all night, but you can't.
That's like that's like that classic example of, you know, trying to get your kids to stop smoking. Well, but fuck, Dad, you smoke. That's just, it doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, it does not work.
Yeah.
And I think for difficult subjects, it's real easy to hit the it's not my problem, let's ban it, let's put that problem off, all of that sort of thing. I think David Seymour is the wrong person to talk about this.
Yeah.
I think this is another thing that schools, the people that spend an enormous amount of time with that young person need to be engaged with. And I think this is something that our government talks about, reading and writing and maths and all of that sort of stuff. One of the absolute critical things that I think that our schools are still not given room to do is critical thinking with media.
Yeah. Yes. Media
like
studies.
How information is developed, how people are messing with that information, how you can be influenced and how you can stop it. And this comes under that umbrella.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of older generations just poo-poo away the subject of media studies, but it would come under that aspect. Yeah. It comes under that aspect of staying safe, both in the meat space and the virtual space, the online space. But schools can't do that because, as I read in a story today, they want to focus on teaching kids cursive. Why not just teach them how? Yes.
Is that coming back? Cursive?
But yeah, the Teachers Association is pushing big on that today. I mean, just teach them fucking Morse code or how to write with a quill. At that point, it's crazy. These guys are so enamored with looking backwards that they are setting kids up to absolutely fail in the modern world.
Yeah,
but you know, I'm going to acknowledge, not a parent, don't have kids. I have not had to deal with this, but I've spoken to many parents that do. I've got friends that have kids. I acknowledge how fucking scary that is.
And also, this is one of the differences with many other parents out there who are maybe my age and stuff, is this digital space is my world. So I probably know this digital space and how things work. Like how often the kids come to me and say, "Hey, Dad, have you heard that?" And I go, "Yep. I heard that. Know what's going on." And it's only because I'm online most of the time getting prepared for you lovely people. So, but it doesn't matter if you're not a parent, Chewy, as long as you're a mammal. Because Citizen Gold says Roman is not a parent, he's barely a mammal. So if you're a mammal...
We'd need to investigate that. I mean,
Yeah.
famously, there's a quote from one, I mean, it was cheated at the Oscars, but I have nipples. Can you milk me?
Jeez, mate, you're coming up with some shady things today. Frosty
Yeah,
says...
look, nobody's provided proof of Rimmer's nipples. And
Okay.
long may that continue.
We'll get around banning phones at 16 like we got around phones being banned at school. I think phones are banned at school now, aren't they? Or are they primary schools? But yeah, so maybe...
Under punishment of law.
Maybe a hollow promise. Frosty also says, do you reckon it's harder or easier growing up as a young person now with the prevalence of social media?
I had quite a rough teenage years at my school. I was bullied quite a lot, being a drama kid. It's the fact that the bullying does not stop at the school gate. I don't know how I would have dealt with that personally. But then again, the flip side of that is, would I have found my tribe earlier if I was more online?
I think that kind of question is a bit like, they talk about the greatest All Black wingers of all times, and they talk about Terry Wright, and Terry Wright in the 80s and 90s was this little kind of 80-kilo rugby player who you wouldn't imagine even being on the field these days. And the honest answer to who was the greatest is that, well, if Terry Wright was here in 2024, he'd be 105 kilos. He'd just built up to this size of a person today. They talk about Michael Jordan being the greatest player ever, but if he was playing today, his more three-pointers, because that's the style of the game today. And I kind of feel a bit the same as that. I don't know if it's easier or harder either way, because like Chewy maybe didn't get as much rough and tumble if he was a teenager today, but like he said, he would have got it online. And, so I don't know if there's an answer to that question. I really don't, because I think it really does come down to the era that the person is in, and how would someone else, how would I grow up in that era now? I don't know. I don't know if I can answer. I don't want to sit on the fence.
I think no matter what generation, it's shit being a teenager. It's fucking God awful, terrible. Kids are terrible, regardless of time period. It's
the delivery mechanism that's changed, not the terribleness. Planet Walk says social media addiction is a problem. So how about some kind of social media addiction management classes to teach techniques to help kids manage it? Yeah, it's such a hard one overall, because say the same thing about alcohol. Maybe Otago University first years just need to have an alcohol addiction management class to teach techniques. Would that change the way they drink? Probably not. So I'm not trying to also be like, there's no answer here. I'm just trying to be realistic. It's a great idea, and I think that would be something in media studies that you could do. I found if you give kids agency and power, that can be the thing that helps. So if they can go, oh, Dad, I see what they're doing. They're trying to get me to do this by doing A, B, and C. I'm like, yeah, you've got it. Okay, well then I'm not going to do it. So if you can figure out a way to give them that can help them, I think, in the long run. Gold says, David Seymour suspects, so no actual data to back up your claim, David. You're just the worst example of a human out there. And yeah, but the thing is, there is research out there. Peter
These
says
kids getting on Wikipedia and changing his bio to say that he's the worst person in the world. That's what's really driving this.
Somebody has to do that tonight, please. There's youth mental health, but social media is a tool for youth activism. Yeah. Expertise in mental health and tech is needed before implementing this. There's a couple of other messages that have popped up in there as well. These are just a couple of lovely people who are saying early fee. Thank you, Henry. Appreciate the super chat. Whoops from Kooky. Maybe that's because he's on time. I don't know. But Kookie's given us a whoops. Thank you for the super chat. And if I didn't say it for all those other people, thank you for your super chat. So that was pretty obvious. Campbell says late fee. Sorry for being late. No worries, Campbell. We'll let you off this one time. And then
we can't edit David Seymour's Wikipedia. It's locked because of vandalism.
Stink, bro. Peter says the news, wreck the news, a user's manual, Alain de Botton. I guess that's a recommendation by Peter. All right. Anything else you want to add to about that conversation before we move on?
No, look, I think it's a really layered conversation, and Seymour should be 400 miles away from it. Like, we haven't even touched on the mechanics, really. Like, you're turning around to the social media companies and going, well, we want these specific rules for our country. And then you turn around and go, right, so how does a 16-year-old prove that they're 16? There's no government ID at that point.
Yeah.
So...
there's mechanics as well.
What?
I guess what they'll be doing is, are they just giving parents an out? And by the way, thanks for the super hit, Kiwi Bird, being teen sucks regardless of the generation. Maybe what I'm just being generous here. Maybe what they're trying to do is make it so parents can go, no, if it was up to me, you could have TikTok, but law says you can't have it, so you'll just have to wait. I don't know. Anyway. Let's go and have a look. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen this story yet. Obviously, I know this story. I haven't seen this one. That's one of the reasons I want to watch it. I don't know how much of this you've seen, Chewy, at your work day, but I watched the whole press conference and the whole way through.
I haven't seen any of it.
You should, I'm not saying she's the focal point because she's not, but just have a look at Chloe's face. It's fairly obvious there's been a lot of tears going on around this announcement, although obviously people have known for a couple of weeks within the inner circle. So Marama Davidson today making a pretty heavy announcement.
Kia ora, good evening. Green co-leader Marama Davidson has revealed she's been diagnosed with breast cancer and will go on leave at the end of the month to undergo treatment, including a partial mastectomy.
Davidson says she intends to stay on as co-leader once she has recovered. And here is political editor Jenna Lynch with a story.
A heartbreaking personal moment becoming public.
Just over a month ago, I was sitting in a doctor's office. At one of those appointments, you always hope you'll never need.
Marama Davidson.
That was like the first line. You know how I said, I wonder what this is about. And you're watching it live. That's the first line. And straight away in that first line, everyone's like, you can feel, well, I was by myself, but I imagine everyone's like, oh, this is much more serious than the behaviour of an MP. That was the very, very first line.
Davidson received the diagnosis so many of us hope to never receive.
A routine mammogram showed some potential concerns. A biopsy then confirmed I have breast cancer.
She's been pushing through the last month, looping her co-leader in a few weeks ago and the rest of her caucus team just this morning.
If anything, the diagnosis really helped me to focus even more. While I can work, I will continue to.
But at the start of next month, treatment begins. She will be having a partial mastectomy and taking leave for at least 4 months, though she will not be stepping down from her co-leader role.
This diagnosis has given me even more passion and energy to do the mahi that needs to be done.
Her entire caucus cloaking her today. Davidson was wished a speedy recovery by the Prime Minister, who posted that his thoughts are with Davidson and her family at this time, echoed back home by his acting PM.
We wish her well, and our hopes are with her for a speedy recovery as she faces this difficult health challenge.
Labour's Kitty Allen was diagnosed with cervical cancer while a minister and knows all too well how hard it is to open up about something so private.
Having to make those statements in public when you're going through something that's quite personal can be the most immeasurable challenge. And I know that probably when she first heard that word cancer, it would have sent shocks down the spine. Not just for her, but her entire whānau. So just sending them a lot of love.
Māori women are 35% more likely to be diagnosed with breast cancer and 33% more likely to die from it.
There is a fundamental issue, a systemic issue that's not been addressed.
Got a lot of friends who I wish were still here from breast cancer. Probably most of us have. And I'm thinking of them and thinking of their families and feeling grateful beyond words that we are going to treat this.
Marama Davidson's cancer was caught early. She wants everyone to get the screening they need.
Yep.
Wahine mā, please book in your mammograms.
Early detection saves lives.
That's all. We don't need to hear what she got to say. I want to tell a story about early detection as well, but not to do with me. But Chewy, this is the first you've kind of seen stuff.
Yeah, that's. I was scanning the faces in the background there. Well,
remember, everyone in that group other than Chloe did not know. So that was they knew this morning.
I want to acknowledge the fact that that's leadership. That's real leadership. Like, to put yourself up there in that sort of vulnerable position and know that it is a moment for other people out there. Like, there's a reason that she mentioned for people to go and get their scans, because that's something that's going to hit home for a lot of people that might have been putting it off.
Yeah.
But for a politician to stand up there in an intensely personal, private battle and go, there's a lesson here for others, that's leadership.
Yep. Yep, 100%. I suspect you'll see the number of mammograms shoot up in the next wee while because of this. I want to tell you a quick story, a personal story. I might have told this story on the show before, but if I haven't, it's all about early detection. So my dad used to be a part of Rotary. You know, every Monday night they'd go out and they'd hang out with all the old boys and hear a person speak and eat food and come home. There was a speaker one night at his Rotary who was talking about his journey through prostate cancer. And one of the main points that the speaker made was, I had no symptoms. And through circumstances, I ended up being diagnosed positive, if that's the right word, for prostate cancer. And he said from the front, if you're in this age bracket, whatever it was, 55 to 70 or 60 to 70, Dad was 60 at the time, he said, just go and get a test. First test is just a blood test. I think it's called the PSA levels in your blood. That's all it is. All they need to do is tick a little, when you're giving blood, tick a little thing. And guess what, Joe? You probably know where I'm going. No symptoms, my father had prostate cancer. Yeah. So because they got it so early, the doctors said to him on day one, you will die with prostate cancer, but not of prostate cancer. And he survived another quarter of a century. So I'm someone who every time, even though I'm too young demographically, every time I go get bloods, and I do my bloods probably once or twice a year just for my own self-interest, keep an eye on things. I just go and get them done. I always ask them, and I think it's the PSA, PSA. I always ask them because they don't tick that box when you're my age. But I always say, you got to play up on it a bit sometimes. Oh, my dad died of it and he wasn't that old and he had no symptoms, and doctors will do what you tell them to do most of the time. So I said, I want that tested, and I've been fine all the way through. And now basically my doctor's telling me, if you're this age and you're only at this level, you're not going to ever get it, which is nice to hear. But the thing about early detection, what Marama is saying today, my personal experience through my father, it's just like for a lot of these things like prostate cancer, you don't need anything other than a blood test. Most of us get a blood test once in a while. Men out there, just get them, tell them. Say, the doctor, can I please check that as well? Early detection saves lives. Chewy, sorry.
I think everybody in chat, everybody listening to this at the moment will know someone that's been affected by cancer and what an insidious, evil, fucking prick of a thing it is. We've been talking all of this week, and I don't want to shine a political light on this too much. I think it cheapens what Marama is doing there.
Yeah.
But this is a public figure going through it. It's something that a lot of people go through. And we've been talking about how cancer drugs are underfunded and all of that sort of thing. And the stats that they use there about how much more prevalent it is for Maori women to not survive something like this.
Yeah,
is again something that we have been talking about all the way through this year.
And I wonder if that's to do with
not right.
That might to do with later detection. You know, Māori within our health system, there's not they don't get as good a results or have as much access as non-Māori do. Hence the Māori Health Authority. Thanks, National. Not to politicise it. And maybe one of the reasons Māori don't survive it as long, or they die more likely than non-Māori of it, is because within the health system that there is, that doesn't provide for Māori well enough, although it is a agreement they've had within that treaty that they signed all back on all those days, is because of the system around them not working for them, they have a later detection perhaps, and that, of course, later detection leads to more likely death from whatever the cancer is. I know you don't want to. I know what you're saying. You don't want to politicize it, but fuck, man, what, 2 weeks on from not funding 13 cancer drugs? This government, who's also then, I mean, like, Marama's privileged. Like, I mean, she won't see this. I'm not saying anything bad, but she's privileged. There's money. It's a good salary. She'll have, good health. She'll be getting the regular checkups.
She'd be the first to acknowledge the fact.
Yeah, of course, of course. But there are a lot of people who aren't, and that those 13 cancer drugs and that Māori Health Authority and stuff, there will be people who could have been help on those that now won't, maybe through the Māori Health Authority, that maybe won't get the same diagnosis they would have got now coming back into a system not fit for purpose for Māori, thanks to some decisions made by this government. So yeah, it does feel, I don't want to be the person that stands up after the mass shooting in America and go, this is no time to talk about restrictions on guns. We don't want to do that, but we also don't want to kind of ignore the obvious conversations. Cancer has been put on all of our television screens massively today. This government has a crap record when it comes to cancer and when it comes to Māori health. We don't want to politicize it, but we do want to say the fucking obvious,
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything in the chat?
So much in the chat. Look, lots of lovely kind comments for Marama as well. And look, I don't want to highlight any of these any more than I have to, but there's been a few mentions of just basically trolling on the usual sites, Herald and all of that sort of stuff. Right-wing trolls feeling like the 15-year-old edgelords that they are by being unempathetic, callous assholes. Push through it, people. Ignore it. Like, don't feed the meat to them. Fuck them. Sad, angry people.
I banned someone on my TikTok today. I've never done that before, I don't think. And it wasn't because they said anything to me. It's because they said something to someone else who had said something positive about Marama. And I'm just like, oh, fuck off. You can fuck off. I don't know who you are. You piece of trash. Off you go.
And to be clear, if this was a politician on the other team, I'd be saying the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
This is a human thing that transcends what political side they're on and all of that sort of thing. If it was Seymour standing up and saying he had prostate cancer and that sort of thing, as much as I don't like the guy, as much as I don't like his politics, that fucking sucks. It's human to acknowledge that. You strip all of that away. It's called empathy. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of empathy, and I reckon more people should have more of it.
No,
so
I reckon it's
push
overrated.
through those shitbirds on social media that just want to be edgy. Fuck it.
Rajan makes a fair point. This government politicised cancer first by going back on their promises about the drugs and scrapping the Māori Health Authority. They don't get to complain about bad press now. Yeah, fair. I know, but you know what it is? This is going to sound like we're saying we're the shit. It's not that. It's that I'm not a dirtbag. I feel uncomfortable about even the appearance of kind of riding off the back of some bad news or someone to make a political point. Whereas the right, remember how I've described this before? If it was a sport, the left tends to want to look like they're playing a perfect game. They want to throw the perfect spiral pass and they want to have the perfect tackle and they want to look like they're doing it really well even if they lose. The right, they'll just fucking rip your head off and run through the middle of you and kill your child if they can, if it means winning the game. And so it's because there's this empathy thing on the left, and I don't think we like to rip the head off to win the game. When something comes up like this, it does feel a bit privacy, not really my story, but we got to speak the truth to it. That's what it comes down to. And look, they know. Marama knows.
Yeah. Brother Monk's nailed it here. Unfortunately, there's some empathy as woke. We laugh, but that's true.
Yeah.
Like when people go, what is woke? And you remember they can never find an answer.
Yeah.
And it always turns out to be some variation of, it's something I don't like. What it tends to be is empathy. Every fucking time. Think about it. Everything that gets singled out as being woke, it's empathy. Is thinking about someone that's in a position that isn't the same as yours.
Yeah.
That's empathy.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to live a life where you're either going to be empathetic and be wrong or be a cunt and be wrong, I would go with the empathetic and be wrong. That would be the life I'd choose to live. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, shall we move on? I don't want to pull this short if you've got more to add, but I want to go on to the Willie Jackson Q&A as well.
Let's push on.
Okay, we've got several quick and short clips with Willie Jackson. And there's a debate to be had around, and the Hobson's pledge has already probably clipped it. about are there different rights for Māori under the treaty. There's a point to be had, a conversation to be had towards the end of this. But first of all, let's just go through a few of the things that Willie was asked about by Jack Tame. The first one is what was his thoughts around a Māori parliament, as has been expressed by Rawhiti and some others.
I think I understand where they're coming from. I think it's a huge frustration for Māori at the moment. Māori kaupapa initiatives, policies under attack every time. It's a natural course that where they're going. I think it's a distraction. It's not something that we would support in Labour, because we've got immediate problems in front of us. We've got a housing problem, we've got a health problem, we've got a fight in Parliament. We've got a fight within the system, and I think it's a distraction. How are you going to fund it? How are you going to support it? Here's the problem with the Māori Parliament. In 1890, it was first mooted, or it first came about. We had 4 Māori seats there. 4 Māori seats. Now we've got 7 Māori seats, but 26 Māori who don't represent Māori, who are on the list. People like Seymour, Winston Peters, Shane Jones, myself, Marama Davidson. And I just don't think it will work. I tell you what could work is a Congress, which Mason Jury has talked about, which brings together iwi and urban interest NGOs. I think that would be good. But I think a parliament, although I understand the frustration from Te Pāti Māori, might be a distraction and take too much time. We've got to fight within the system, and I think we're doing a good job at the moment.
So there you go. There's the first one. Not much. I think as well, I wonder as well, Chewy, and I'll bring this up towards the end of these clips, if the wording we're using may not be quite accurate. Like, okay, so I don't think many people, including I don't know this, but I would think most Māori aren't going to be down for a completely separate Māori parliament. So maybe there's a better word, maybe a Congress, maybe a layer, maybe I don't know, maybe there's something else for Māori to have involvement on a level that then contributes to Parliament or something. I don't know. And I just wonder if we're in a time where we need to think about how we're describing things and figure out what we're saying rather than what the words are. Like, we are going to talk about rights because we have different rights. I mean, we talked about this last time, and I don't want to shoot my load too early here, but the idea that I have a right because of some things I've signed on to with my bank, that's a contractual right that Chewy doesn't have. So we can have different rights. We can use the word right in different terms. I wonder if Parliament's a bit like that, Chewy. Is there a better way to describe what would be good for Māori, what he's talking about?
I think that'd be an amazing conversation to have. Do I think the country is mature enough to have that conversation? Currently, the evidence says no, because it will get twisted into a fucking race war. We're not at the point of saying, well, is the way that our representative democracy working, representing people in a fair way, like completely outside of whether we're just talking about Māori. But when we look at how our democracy works in New Zealand, it has to 100% be framed within the treaty. And it hasn't. We've attempted to redress it in the last 40, 50 years, but we aren't there yet.
Yeah.
All evidence says we're not there yet. And I acknowledge the point. I honestly think Te Pāti Māori have pushed this out to get a reaction, to sort of test the waters a little bit. Yeah. And I think you might be right. The calling it a parliament and saying it's a completely separate thing is making the wrong people latch on to the wrong thing.
I remember talking to Julianne Genter about a Greens policy, which was affordable quality housing is a right. And I was involved where I moderated a debate about that with her, which is actually on this channel, the DOC channel. You can have a look for it if you like. And I was kind of like, but how do you do that? Because what if it's affordable but not quality? What if it's quality but not affordable? And what she basically said, and I am paraphrasing, is you put these things out there as targets and goals, even within policy, to try to attain. Maybe they're 20 years away, but maybe that's what you try and kind of do. And I wonder if, like you've just said, throwing these ideas out there to start the conversation to reach some kind of conclusion, not saying whether it would or wouldn't be a parliament, but in 20 years from now, it's the beginning of a cycle rather than, the immediate result they want to see, perhaps. Anyway,
and there is an example of this that we've spoken to or about on the right as well, when we both agreed that the choice of language is deliberate and we should be careful about it. And that is David Seymour talking about the treaty.
Yeah.
He wasn't talking about scrapping or changing the treaty. He was talking about changing the principles around the treaty and the framework about how the treaty was interpreted and all of that sort of thing. Language is important.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it
Which
provokes a reaction in people.
And it obviously leads on to, if that was the case, no, we're not doing anything with the treaty. We're just going to legislate how the treaty can be read and implemented. But the treaty can stay as it is. All right, let's do another one of these clips. This clip is talking about the Manurewa Marae and what's going on over there, the accusations on the Māori Party.
The allegations about inappropriate or illegal behaviour at Manurewa Marae are being investigated. Of course, all accusations that have been made have been strongly denied by those at the centre of them. Do you support the public service inquiry?
Absolutely, 100%. I think it's incredibly important.
I
think it's incredibly important, and that's happening. I think the police inquiry is happening. Every inquiry is happening, I think, across government agencies. So we've been very clear that has to go through, that process has to go through, and if anything is found untoward, then obviously there'll be problems for those people. So it's a huge thing that's happening in South Auckland at the moment. A lot of us, being part of South Auckland, have never seen this before, but it's necessary. We had an outstanding candidate in Penny Henare. We were shocked he lost the election. We're waiting to see what's going to happen. Penny has not taken any legal action. We're just sitting and watching to make sure this inquiry goes through. I think it's important. No, we can't have people's private information shared. I'm not saying that's happened, but it's incredibly important because it cuts to the heart, I suppose, of democracy and what people see as fair. And we want.
It is interesting that they're being so cautious to say it hasn't happened, yet they're still listing out exactly what the accusations are.
And we're being respectful of the process, and let's see how the process plays out.
Before these allegations were made public through media reporting and stuff, had you heard any of the allegations in your circles?
Look, you hear things all the time, and people are having. Here's the thing: people might not be aware. We're all part of each other.
No, I know. I think people are aware, which is why I'm interested.
Yeah, well,
So just to be totally clear, and again, all allegations have been strongly denied. In your circles, because you have close connections with Manurewa, had you heard any of these allegations before they were made public through that reporting?
I had heard different things, but people only half see things, half hear things.
But the same allegations.
We heard some of that talk last year when the election was on. Rumours are flying all the time. Allegations sometimes are flying, but a lot of that is very jovial, and we'll see what happens. I think the other side of it is Manurewa Marae has done an incredible job in terms of serving South Auckland, and I think their chairman, Rangi Mai Relation, has made that point. So, they get a bit irritated because they want to, they sort of see themselves as the little players here, and our communities want the powerful investigator too, Jack. They want the ex-investigator. They want the fast-track lobbyists to be investigated. They want the tobacco lobbyists to be investigated. You understand that? So they feel, geez, I hope they're not just coming for the little Manurewa Marae.
There you go. So there's this. I mean, it seems like what he's saying, and I think he's in there that it is his marae. I know he lives in Mangere Bridgeway. Not Manurewa, or he certainly used to. He's saying, and I think that's what most of us have said, I think, the review seems to be okay with the accusations. I guess as long as this is not a political football for the right to kick around to distract from something else, or if it's plainly a set-up job and there's nothing to see here. But accusations have been made, obviously have been around for a while, and that's what he's decided.
Yeah, there's accusations left, right, and centre around this, and I think because of that, everybody is welcoming an investigation into it.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Now, I was going to do a bit on the review of the election, but we won't leave that. But because this is one that I particularly want to play, because we didn't do this last week. I saw this clip last week, but we didn't do it. Hana-Rawhiti, the young MP that unseated Nai Mahuta.
Oh, yes.
We haven't played this, but I'm going to first of all play the conversation with Willie Jackson. What I found quite interesting about this conversation is actually Willie Jackson was asked quite a lot about the Māori Party. It's like, I'm not part of the Māori Party. And it's not I don't get the sense that someone from New Zealand First goes on and gets asked all about ACT. It's kind of a bit, so we have a Māori in front of us, so let's ask him all the questions about the Māori Party, which they've just done about the marae, and he's about to do again right now about some words used in the House last week, spoken in Māori.
Momo tō toto Māori. Momo tō toto Māori.
You know what that means?
Your Māori blood.
Waste of your Māori blood.
Yeah.
That was the niece there, Hana.
Yeah, that was Hana-Rawhiti Maipi-Clarke responding to criticism.
I was so proud of her when she did that. I thought she was fabulous.
Just so people are clear what that was, is your Māori blood is being wasted. She was saying it to Winston Peters, your Māori blood is being wasted. That's what it means.
And so did Erica Stanford too, I noticed.
No, Erica Stanford was very clear in making the comments that Erica Stanford made complimenting Hana-Rawhiti.
Yeah.
It wasn't with regards to those
comments. Well, she should have, because, hang on, Winston had a crack at her in the House.
So Winston had a crack at her in the House, and it's appropriate to say you're wasting your Māori blood.
Hey, you're in the House, you're responding. I've said worse than that, I think, Jack in the House. I've said worse, and Winston said worse than that. I mean, Okay. And hang on, I thought good on her. I was proud of her. She had a crack at Winston, and Winston got put in his place. And look, what's wrong with that? This is a young woman, and we're all looking at who's getting support out there. I thought it was a fabulous response to Winston, who went on one of his silly rants.
So let's just have a look at it. This is off Hannah's own Instagram. This is the interaction. So basically Winston has a crack at her and she's like, bruv, bring it.
Never been seen, and you are not the youngest member of parliament. You never were. Dobby Pike here was. Let me inform you, Maori people, that Dobby Pike here was here when he's 19 years of age. So stop showing off. Stop showing off and wearing a hooey. I've only been here 5 seconds, and where I come from, where you come from, you listen to your elders, okay? So just hush up. Show some manners. Whoa. Show that you might understand where you might.
Yeah, you wait though. If you haven't seen this before, I'm sure most of you have, but you have a check this out. Do you know how old was she? She's in her early 20s, eh?
Yeah.
Early 20s does this to Winston.
Might go in the future before they turf you out in 5 seconds' time. Here we go again.
I find it very interesting that one person in this parliament is so triggered by me. So intimidated of me. Yes. Not once did I mention, not once did I say anything over here.
The bit I like most of all is the giggle at the end. That's the best bit. You watch out for that.
I said. So if we want to go there, let's go there. No mai ki tō mātou nei whare, no mai ki tōku nei marae, haere ki te kōrero atu ki oku nei kaumātua, haere ki te kōrero ki oku nei ruruhi korei heke o ngā tirangi, no ngā haue whao te motu, hara mai ki te kōrero, maumau tō toto Māori, maumau tō toto Māori, maumau tō toto Māori. I think Mr. Winston Peters would be so proud of you.
That's, yeah, I mean, it sends a shiver. It's like when you see that age is not necessarily the precursor for mana or for, or for a courageous heart or for wisdom on some lives. It's like, it makes you shiver just hearing. I don't speak Māori, neither does Winston, ironically, but you can feel it.
Shane will give him the cliff notes later. Yeah, Hannah is 21. Look,
sheesh, formidable.
I think that's one of those examples where you don't actually need to know. Like, if that was directed at me, I have very little idea of what she said.
Yeah, but
I would welcome the earth to swallow me at that time, because I would know that I have made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think if that's the start of her career, look out.
Yep. Nick says Winston doesn't like being talked down to in Māori, let alone by a woman. LOL, loved it. Yeah, there was of course most people here are going to love it. It's pretty. It was fascinating, and just. Yeah, I agree. 21 years old and calling out Winston like that. And even the cadence, the pauses, just the way the whole, not just the Māori work. Yeah, it's very, very good. Very good.
Very,
all right.
very good.
Let's wrap up with Willie. And this is the part of the conversation we might have a bit of a chat about the word rights, because this is just a smidge over 2 minutes, talking about rights that Māori have under the treaty, rights that New Zealanders have overall. Let's have a listen.
No, I don't think we did a lot wrong. I think that Māori were strategic. Our Māori caucus have been complimented by Te Pati.
And that is not the right space. This is a very special little interlude for live viewers only, because this will not be in the clip. So congratulations, team. You got to see behind the thing a little bit. All right, here we go.
Yeah, right across the spectrum.
Let's consider some of the language that ACT Leader David Seymour is using at the moment. Do you agree, for example, that all citizens being equal is a fundamental democratic value?
Oh, of course. Of course.
Does the treaty afford different rights for different people?
Absolutely.
How are those things consistent?
You see what I mean? I mean, those words. Do we all have the same rights? Yes. Do Māori have different rights? Yes. So this is the conversation, I reckon, that needs to be had around words and what they mean.
Absolutely. So
how do different rights for different people make citizens all equal?
Well, we all have equal rights in certain areas, but Māori have a special, a special Indigenous right that is recognised in Article 1, Article 2 and Article 3. Article 2 particularly recognises
interlude.
Our sovereign or our tino rangatiratanga rights. Now, all New Zealanders can support that. New Zealanders are all recognised in the treaty, but you can't see this is a very cunning, dangerous track that Seymour's going down. He wants to reduce and take away Māori and treaty rights. Māori are not accepting it. That's why you're getting the loose language from Te Pati Māori and others out there.
Article 2, as you point out, is at the very centre of this debate.
Apologies about the hang-up.
That term tino rangatiratanga. Just to be totally clear, in your view, does tino rangatiratanga apply only to Māori, who signed the treaty, or to all?
No, it applies to Māori. It applies to Māori. Māori have a special right that gives them the right to participate as partners in this country, and judges and academics have interpreted the treaty in that manner, so that they've interpreted it as us being able to be full partners in this country. Others, then you're talking about others, have said, no, it's not about partnership, it's about Māori running the whole show. That's not what the Labour Party wants. That's not what most reasonable New Zealanders want. We want to participate with our Pākehās and brothers and sisters, working class, right across this country as partners. And so we owe the judges from 87, and we owe people like Bolger and Graham and Jacinda, we owe them a lot, because they've said we are going to be partners despite what the Seymours and Winston Peters are saying, who are trying to deny a rightful partnership exists in this country.
So, Chewy, I think that there is a conversation to be had here around languages, and the word rights can be used differently. It's also fascinating, and we've said this for probably 2 years now, how the only rights that David Seymour wants to make equal are rights between Māori and non-Māori. This might sound flippant, but disabled people have a right to park in a certain place that I don't have. So we can use the word rights and mean different things, yet we're all equal and have the same rights under the law. And I wonder, sorry to use a horrible word that I know we're going to repel back from because of Mr. Luxon, but maybe entitlements is a better word. Māori are entitled to the outworking of the contract they signed that non-Māori are not entitled to. You know what I mean? That's the same. That's the same thing, but it's not using that word that then Hobson's pledge get to clip out and pretend that rights only means one thing, because it clearly doesn't. It clearly doesn't. You can clearly use it contextually differently at different times, Chewy.
You could weaponize so much if you strip out the context and the nuance of what you're actually discussing.
Yeah.
Like, you see a lot of that when people are talking about, Māori are just out to control everything. That sort of reaction has been around for as long as I've been alive. And it's come from the smallest points of contention, and the most gentle of like, maybe we should look at this a different way. You know, we've spoken in the past about the seabed and foreshore. The argument around that was that Māori were going to control who could go to the beach. Such a laughably over-the-top, hyperbolic argument that some people didn't have the brains to sort of go, that's baked, and took it fucking wholeheartedly. And we see that same argument come back when we start talking about Three Waters.
Yeah.
You know, Three Waters was completely derailed from any conversation about the positive aspects of the fact that we need to look at how we manage our water. And it became, Māori are coming for our water.
Yeah.
You strip the nuance, you strip the context, you just hit that big old racism button.
Yeah.
And you go. And then when we're discussing something that has so much context and so much nuance around, I said earlier, are we mature enough to have this conversation? And so many in our society, and unfortunately so many in our government, are not set up and not mature enough to have this conversation. I have no problem as a Pākehā acknowledging that Māori, the other side of the signatures on that on the treaty, have special rights. Does it negatively affect me? Fucking no. Could it positively benefit me? Yes, because I live in this country.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Steph says it in an interesting way as well. This is the thing when it's so funny when you say we're not mature enough to have this conversation. I feel like we are, like we're having it right now. So what does that say about those who want to oppose these thoughts? Because like Steph's just come up with a perfectly good example. I have rights on my property that my neighbor doesn't. We are both equal citizens. So you can have it mean different things and used in different contexts. And I just think that
excellent analogy. I really like.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I just think that, as we've said, forever, this is just a wedge issue that Seymour uses to get oxygen, to get votes, and probably to get funding, to be perfectly honest with you. Because as soon as you say to him, what else are you going to make equal? Are we going to be, because at the moment we're not all equal under the law due to age, because you always talk about race. We're not equal due to age. We're not equal due to sex. I've always used that example that only male priests can work in the Catholic Church. So that's a discrimination, but you don't want to make equal or make the same any other protected class. It's only race, and because that's where your funders, your voters, and your votes are coming from. So it's a nonsense. And unfortunately, when this happened last time, Hobson's Pledge did exactly that. They clipped the last conversation where, I can't remember which MP it was, sorry, but said that we have different rights. There was a space under the treaty, and the under the treaty bit was clipped out of the thing that Hobson's Pledge put out there. And I'm sure if this hasn't been done already, I'm sure it has been, it will be, with Willie saying that Māori have different rights. It's not the same. It doesn't feel to me at least like the same way. I'm not an expert, but like I said, think about it as what's the entitlements guaranteed to Māori based on that contract they signed? Then that kind of makes the conversation go away, right? What are the entitlements that come to me based on my bank contract versus my neighbour? What are the rights I have versus them? What are the rights that are in society? What rights do we have as citizens? What rights do Aucklanders have that people in Dunedin don't, based on them paying rates and stuff in Auckland? It's so silly. And it feels disingenuous because it feels like these guys know it's silly, but they've duped enough people. Remember, with COVID, it was always the disinformation dozen farming out all that information and duping people. And then the people they've duped become their soldiers and just parrot their points without a single thought. And you ask them one question. I see it on Twitter all the time. The economy is the worst it's ever been under Labour. Can you show us your metrics for that? And then the goalposts move. COVID, this and that. It's like most of them have nothing, no ability to go one step deeper. And which means, ironically, Seymour and Peters and their ilk have done a very good job in sowing this discontent. That's me.
Absolutely.
You want to share something? You got something on the screen I can see.
I got a couple of little stories just to wrap up, and maybe it's something we'll dig into a little bit more later on. But I just love how among all the big nuggets of shit that we sift through from this government, every now and then they give us a little treat, a little extra pebble. Some of my favourites today. Government seeks feedback on non-consent granny flat policy. Calling it granny flats makes it nice and cute, doesn't it? It doesn't mean slumlording. Doesn't mean converting your garage to house family.
It doesn't mean when you buy a house and they say, "Oh, all that work's unconsented, so we can't list it as a self-contained unit." Doesn't mean that.
It's all about solving housing unaffordability, but in the absolute worst way possible, with zero concept of unintended consequences. But this is great. It just starts strong and it keeps going. Government has announced consultation on a move that would force councils to allow building up to 60 square meters in certain areas without requiring any consent.
Sounds very mandaty. I don't know the
last time. It's mandaty. Also, I don't know when the last time that Bishop saw a granny flat. 60 square meters is fucking near half the size of my first house. And that was
my first house. My first house was 80 square meters, and it was three bedrooms.
Yep. Like there could be a discussion here about, say, tiny homes, but no, we won't do that. We will just leave this steaming pile of a potential policy on the floor right next to the toilet. Like it's the least thought out policy I've seen in a while. But yeah, just pushing it out there. Maybe we bring garage conversions back again. Is kind of how I read it. Just an absolute nonsense from Bishop.
So
one of the absolute titans of thinkers in this government.
What I hear you saying, Chewy, is, there was a little bit of money, a little tiny bit of money left over from Dad's estate that we're going to build a downstairs bathroom. I should wait on that because shortly I'll have to not consent any of the work I'm getting done and be able to basically jerry-rig it, have some kind of pulley system to get rid of the waste or something. That's what I should do.
Fuck it, mate. You don't worry about installation. Just use fucking pellet wood.
Like I could use some kind of Wellington bucket fountain system to get rid of the waste from the toilet or something.
Just an open latrine. All fine. Cool. Doesn't need any consents. The other story that I just, so good. Government cancels annual ETS charge for forestry.
Oh, good.
So they don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about paying that money to the emission trading scheme. One of the great the great corporate citizens, the New Zealand forestry industry, definitely haven't done anything that requires, fucking demolished the East Coast with slash, knocking down every bridge. But no, we can't dare threaten an industry that exports 60% of its harvest overseas, just raw logs, doesn't pick up after itself, gets huge concessions from the government as it is. No, you don't need to pay the money for the emissions that you make. Annual service charge was introduced last year and amounts to $30.25 per hectare. Don't worry about it, the government says. Don't worry about it. Now, I'm sure, I would absolutely fucking guarantee that if we looked into National's donations, there are some forestry companies in there. And they've gone, hey, buddy, unrelated to that, whatever fucking amount I donated to you was. But I don't like paying for the emission trading scheme. So can I, just not?
Do you know what we've got to do, though?
Fucking, it's not, mate, it's got nothing to do with your donation because that would be bribery and corruption. But yeah, I'll see what I can do.
What we got to do is this government was very, very good when they were in opposition. And when I say good, I don't mean as in morally good. They were clever. They were effective. in fooling the whole country that the result of the 15-year-olds in high school was the fault of Labour. But actually what it was a line you could directly trace back to 2011 when they brought in national standards. It's a direct line. I was around in 2011 doing radio, and I can remember the debates, and I can remember all the principals saying, this is what's going to happen, and then it happened. So now what we've got to do, right, you ready for this? We've got to make sure that these two decisions, forestry and keeping ag out of the ETS as well, that in whenever it is, 2030, 2050, when we've got a gazillion billion dollar fine to pay to whatever international market, we don't allow national to again blame Labour if they happen to be in at that time, because these are the decisions made today that are going to lead to that money having to be paid back, or paid, the fines to be paid in the future. And national has to own this and keep this.
The minister said the government wanted to rebuild confidence in forestry and would be looking at issues raised in an independent review.
Yeah. All right.
So they're going to look into their mates.
Yeah.
Trust us, it's independent.
Independent. Like Kāinga Ora, where they don't talk to Kāinga Ora. That kind of independence.
No, they won't talk to anybody that lives downstream from a forestry block. But they will talk to the CEO of a forestry company.
All right. Now,
independently of any record keeping.
Tawhiri says on our previous conversation, an early settler, Francis Dart Fenton in 1857 said, quote, "No system of government that the world ever saw can be more democratic than that of the Maoris."
Now, I can imagine some Eurocentric, the Greeks invented democracy creeps just absolutely losing their fucking mind at that.
Well, it's someone's observation.
I love that. Democracy was invented by the Greeks. No. The Greeks invented Greek salad. Sure. Democracy? No.
All right, team. That's us for tonight. Thanks for being with us. It has been an interesting one. We obviously wish all the best out to Marama and her whānau. And it's been a big night. Thank you for being a part of it.
And pick up the news. Big Harry style, keeping it loose. New Zealand, where the politics play, they bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess all over the land. They shine a light with a mic in their hand. No time for cheese, just facts straight up. Bad and chewing, never backing up. From the Cape to Bluff, no place too far. They expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble at their mighty voice. Pat and chew, they'll make the right choice.
All right, team, thanks for being with us tonight. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Love for you to be a part of what we do by heading to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. You could also be a part of these lovely names scrolling by who are most of our patrons. I have a couple more to add to that. And also remember, bhnshop.nz, up until Thursday, we're supporting Cancer Society of New Zealand, and you're supporting us by going and checking out this month's merch, bhnshop.nz. Anything from you, Chewy?
No. Good night. I'll see you
Good
tomorrow.
night. See you tomorrow. All right, team. Be well. Hooroo.
Cheers, man.